Welcome to Only in San Jose, a podcast focused on demystifying and democratizing the process of civic participation in the city of San Jose. Hello everyone, I am Elena Yin, pronouns she, her, they, and I am so excited to share this episode on the Youth Commission. This episode was recorded on October 6th, and in that time, we also entered into a national discussion on mental health and our youth, namely the negative impacts of Facebook and Instagram by whistleblower Frances Haugen. I listened to the 3-hour hearing, and I wanted to share some clips to help frame the discussion on the lived reality of the present-day youth members and some of the challenges that they face.
Thank you. Senator Young.
Jen, thank you for your compelling testimony. In that testimony, you discuss how Facebook generates self-harm and self-hate, especially among vulnerable groups like teenage girls. I happen to be a father of 4 kids, 3 daughters, 2 of whom are teenagers, and as you just alluded to, most adults, myself included, have never been a teenager during the age of Facebook, Instagram, and these other social media platforms. And therefore, I think it can be really hard for many of us to fully appreciate the impact that certain posts may have. So can you discuss on a teen's mental health? So can you discuss the short and long-term consequences of body image issues on these platforms, please?
The patterns that children establish in their teenage years live with them for the rest of their lives. The way they conceptualize who they are, how they conceptualize how they interact with other people, are patterns and habits that they will take with them as they become adults, as they themselves raise children. I'm very scared about the upcoming generation because when you and I interact in person and I say something mean to you and I see you wince or I see you cry, that makes me less likely to do it the next time, right? That's a feedback cycle. Online kids don't get those cues and they learn to be incredibly cruel to each other and they normalize it. And I'm scared of what will their lives look like where they grow up with the idea that it's okay to be treated badly by people who allegedly care about them. That's a scary future.
I found that statement, that clip, to be very powerful because the youth truly are the experts in this situation. They are the lived realities of our best intentions. And in my personal opinion, my generation included, we have failed them. From not only legislators' failure to understand and properly protect us all and our rights in this new digital world, to mental health, to the climate crisis, to school mass shootings, the adults have failed at not only taking better care of our youth, but the future environment, their future environment. Instead of preventing future shootings, we are preparing them for it through active shooter drills. We are normalizing it. And as Frances Haugen stated, what they experience now, they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. And that is scary. However, I stand humbled and so inspired by the resilience of our youth at the same time. They are not hopeless, and neither should we be. I have such a deep respect for the youth of today. They have a level of awareness and empathy that is unmatched by our older generations at the moment, and creating, even with everything they've lived through, they are actually becoming hyper-vigilant about creating that positive change that they have been desperately pleading from us on their own. From March for Our Lives to students advocating for mental health services to media darlings' favorite Greta Thunberg climate strike movement, I want to help them do that because I genuinely believe in their leadership. So for this episode, I wanted to not only speak to the Youth Commission, but I really wanted to center and highlight their voices. Joining me on this episode will be our intern, Elena Hollemon. And Elena is a new college graduate with a passion for podcasts and mental health. I wanted to go for the full youth perspective, so I asked her to lead the interview today. She also led with the research, compiled the questions, and helped to edit the episode. And also joining us today is a dear friend of mine, Danielle Boulay Hennessy, who was also a former San Jose Youth Commissioner. We have a really great, spectrum and diversity of voices today. I know I started us on a heavy note. I did that because I wanted the adults especially to take note. That feeling of despair and guilt that we were all too familiar with and sometimes too paralyzed by. As you listen to this next conversation, I want the adults to really take in what is being said and shared here. And I hope that we can all come away from this as inspired as I, Elena, and Danielle, in spite of it all, and enabled into action. I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank you all so much for being here. And without further ado, please introduce yourselves to our listeners.
My name is Nicole Huang. My pronouns are they, them. I represent District 3 and I go to Gunderson High School. I really enjoy playing tennis, and after high school, I hope to major in women and gender studies.
Hello, I'm Gordon. I go by he, him. I represent District 1 and go to the Harker School. So my hobbies include basketball, cooking, running, lots of physical stuff as well. And I also enjoy chess a lot.
Hello, everybody. I'm Amelia Utinko. I go by she, her pronouns. I represent District 4 in the Commission, and I go to Independence High School. A little about me, I love reading, and after high school, I hope to attend a four-year college and major in business administration. Nice to meet you.
I am Danielle Boulay Hennessy. I go by she, her. I served as commissioner for District 10 of the San Jose Youth Commission in 1999. I am passionate about food justice, nutrition security, and racial equity.
Everyone, I'm Elena. I've been helping out Elena for a few months now. I am from Portland, Oregon, but my family moved to San Jose, and I've been living there for the last year and a half during the pandemic, and I just recently relocated to Brooklyn. But I'm still a part of the San Jose community. I studied psychology and neuroscience in undergrad, always been passionate about mental health care and just mental health advocacy. I'm currently working for a tech startup that has a mental health care app, and so I'm hoping to expand upon that. I love podcasts, and so I'm hoping that I can mesh those two worlds together.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing that. I think that, the representation was probably one of the first things that I was really impressed with when I walked into the youth retreat, a couple months ago. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be speaking with you all. Nicole, can you, tell us, like, in, your elevator pitch, what is the Youth Commission for those who are listening for the first time?
The San Jose Youth Commission is a group of 11 youth that are each appointed by their specific district council members and council offices. Meanwhile, there's also one youth appointed by the mayor and city council as the citywide commissioner, and these youth are meant to represent and write policy proposals for the youth populace to the mayor and city council.
All right, great. So we're going to start with some basic questions about just your involvement with the Youth Commission. The first being, what drew you to get involved with local government?
For me, what drew me to local government was that a lot of the issues that are talked about in politics directly impacted me as well as my families. I grew up in a redlined community, and currently as a woman of color, but also queer gender, lesbian, there's a lot of issues that impact me directly in politics. So I felt the need to get involved because of those firsthand experiences.
For me, it was really the chance to advocate for my peers and enact real change in my local community. I feel like there are many day-to-day issues facing the youth in my community, but I feel like those issues are often ignored and left to simmer. And I believe that since these are problems facing the youth, I feel like the opinions of me and my peers merit a place in the discussion for solutions. So the Youth Commission was exactly what I thought was needed, a body of youth led by youth that proposes concrete solutions to our problems.
Great, thank you. And Amelia, what do you think?
So I joined my district youth advisory council because I really resonated with the message that the youth aren't just the future, but they're the now, and they have the power to influence policy and make the change that they want to see. So I joined the Youth Commission because I wanted to gain a more nuanced perspective of San Jose and learn how to create realistic solutions to city-specific issues.
Fantastic. And Danielle, you were on the Youth Commission several years ago. What drew you to get involved in local government?
I was on the youth commission over 20 years ago, so it's been a little while. I didn't even know that the youth commission was an opportunity. I was involved with school government as a fifth grader. I was class president. I was a treasurer in middle school. And then I was actually presented with the opportunity because my mother was an acquaintance with Pat Dando, a council member at the time. And so I didn't even realize that I could interact with local government and have a voice. And so to have that opportunity to share what I felt were the challenges and kind of opportunities for youth, I wanted to seize that opportunity.
Awesome. So the next question is one that you probably spent a lot of time thinking about, and that's what topics and issues you're passionate about and how this year's agenda for the Youth Commission reflects those topics and issues.
So an issue that I'm really passionate about is mental health. It's an issue that I'm acutely familiar with due to the academic environment in my district. I feel like the pressure cooker atmosphere is especially bad here in District 1, and mental health diseases and treatments for said diseases are heavily, heavily stigmatized, in my opinion. So my district runs an annual mental health fair to promote access to resources and to raise awareness. I plan on continuing that tradition. I also plan on writing various mental health themed policy proposals, and the commission as a whole also has plans for various events throughout the year to address mental health concerns.
Absolutely. That is not something that was available to me when I was your age. I love that that is becoming more part of the general conversation and that we're more open to just acknowledging that mental health is an important thing that we need to take care of our students and of people in general. And next, Amelia, what are you passionate about?
Right. So in our Youth Commission work plan, we identified that one of the components that we really need to work on was getting youth more civically engaged. And so how I'm kind of working that into my agenda in my district is that in our District 4 Youth Advisory Council, we're organized into ad hocs or committees that focus on different issues that we identify. So at the moment, we're addressing homelessness, climate change, and social inequities such as the digital divide, racial inequity, gender inequity, and other issues that may arise. And one of the most prevalent issues that face youth today is hustle culture. And so this concept, for viewers who may not be familiar with it, is that students struggle with balancing all of the responsibilities, whether academic and extracurricular, and that has a lot of mental health repercussions. And so oftentimes what happens is that these students, they often sacrifice required time for sleeping and eating in exchange for getting more time to study. And so what DFOIAC is doing is we're creating a conference that is focused on providing resources on how to healthily pursue careers in the Silicon Valley and how to manage their time and organize and to provide these resources for students that may not be equitably available to them.
In terms of like, the school load and balancing all of your priorities, is there any open dialogue with schools and teachers on like kind of like homework assignments or things like that?
Yeah, definitely. So we haven't taken any steps within District 4, but I know that San Jose School District specifically, they're working towards integrating more open conversations about mental health to their students. In my district specifically, Eastside Union High School District, they're creating or they're mandating that each school has social workers to provide these resources for students. So that's definitely a step in the right direction.
Wow, super impressive. Man, all these things did not exist when I was in school.
I have a question in terms of the engagement with the students and working to support them. What does the mental health care landscape look like in the school setting? Is there a lot of support? Do students have access to therapy or just people to talk to and confide in?
While I can't speak for all students, I definitely think that the mental health landscape is definitely becoming more inclusive to the problems that youth face today, especially in District 4 of San Jose. Just in our two major high schools, Independence and Piedmont, I've seen that the school administration is becoming more open to hearing student voices about their mental health problems. And while that may not communicate with lessening homework workloads, because that may not be on the agenda, they're definitely more open to finding resources and making those available to students. Like at Independence, they're offering yoga classes, which is really cool. They're offering mental health support groups with peers. So I definitely think that there's a lot more work to do, but as of right now, we're heading in the right direction to provide equitable resources for all students.
I just want to add on to a little bit about what Amelia was saying. I completely agree. There has definitely been more awareness about mental health in schools, but I do feel like there is this pervasive stigma about actually getting help, getting treatment, etc., that I feel like is impairing a lot of our progress. And also, I feel like in my district specifically, there is a lot of lip service to caring about mental health, but in reality, no concrete action is ever implemented. So again, I agree with Amelia, we're definitely going in the right direction, but there are plenty of things we need to work on.
That's a great point because it's something I experienced in my own undergrad campus. And I think that though the conversation is becoming less stigmatized, there is still a lot of performative behavior rather than actually bringing students into a space that they can feel fully supported. And Nicole, we haven't gotten to you yet. What are you passionate about?
Well, I'm extremely passionate about the environment and social equity. So, in our current work plan for the commission, we're actually addressing the environment through our town halls. My district itself is writing policy proposals on the environment, as well as a few other districts that I know of. And as for social equity, last year, my district wrote a policy proposal that basically stated that brick and mortar stores were required to accept cash up to $20 because in our age, it's very easy to accept digital currency, but when stores turn digital completely, it creates a barrier between those who have the privilege to access a bank account versus those who might be using only cash. And as for the other policy on social equity, my pardon, my district, as well as District 8, who is Commissioner Escobar, worked on a policy to mandate that officers have mental health checks, like mandatory mental health checks every 2 years, because it came up in a meeting with the police chief that that was not happening. So we thought it was necessary.
How was that received by the police chief when you had mentioned the counseling?
At first, we couldn't launch the policy right away, so we just ended up questioning the police chief who was acting, I believe, in that time about how mental health was facilitated within the department. And from there, we had to write the policy independently and pass it through the youth commission. So then afterwards, it could go on to the mayor and city council. But so far, there hasn't been any tangible action that we have noticed, even though it's passed the youth commission.
Okay. And then what kind of climate policies have you written in terms of like, was it for specific departments or kind of general?
A bit of both. The first policy that my district wrote under my term was requiring sustainable architecture for high-rise buildings as well as large construction sites. And I believe that went under planning, building, and code enforcement. Whereas the other policies that we've written include one where a builder is required to strategically deconstruct their buildings so that we can reduce the demolition waste that comes from directly destroying a building.
Wow, those are great ideas. This is a question for all of you. Feel free to, raise your hand. I was just wondering, where did you learn your policy writing skills? Was it in school or was it kind of, on the commission?
Our policy writing skills didn't really come from school. For me personally, it came from being involved in the District 3 Youth Advisory Council, I watched my previous commissioner, Commissioner Marinvik Marishot, write the policy proposals herself. So that's where we got our guidance for this year and for last year in terms of writing.
Just to add on to Nicole's point, I also learned from my District 4 Youth Commissioner predecessor. Her name was Caitlin Chan. She's super awesome. And I think the greatest thing about the YAC is not only do they educate the members about the issues prevalent in our community, but they also equip them with the knowledge and resources on how to create policies of their own. Because they don't really need the YAC to make this change, but we prepare them to make the change, even if they choose to like quit the YAC or if they move on to other things. So I think that's what the beauty of the YAC. Like I've learned so much about like soft skills, people skills, policy writing skills that I wouldn't even have thought was imaginable to me like 2 years ago.
So I think I'm in a bit of a unique situation in that I have not had any previous experience on the D1 YAC. So in terms of the policy writing question, I am kind of working on like impromptu in a sense, but I am learning from the other commissioners. I have a couple copies of Commissioner Huang's old proposals that I am actively learning from. And yeah, I really am just learning my feet. This is an important skill that unfortunately I was not taught a lot about in school, but I am learning.
Wow, very impressive. And then for those of you listening who are not familiar, the YAC is it's a youth advisory council per district, and they facilitate, or is it facilitated by each commissioner?
Yes, each commissioner has their own specific youth advisory council, but you are allowed to collaborate with other commissioners. The only commissioner that doesn't have a youth advisory council would be the citywide commissioner.
Do you think that these skills are something that should be taught in school? Because some of you do have experience, but since Gordon, it's something you're coming in completely fresh. Is that something that you think all students would benefit from?
Absolutely, absolutely. I really do think that civic engagement as a whole is severely underemphasized in academic curriculums. So I feel like this is really an important skill that everyone should be familiar with, so everyone can be more civically conscionable and understand legislature and policy at the national level, which does affect everyone.
Absolutely. So, kind of on that note, because y'all are learning as you go about the policy writing, and also you were really tackling a lot of difficult topics and very real world issues going on. Is there anything about the way that the commission is run that you think should be improved upon?
In my opinion, the youth commission as a whole is really smoothly run, but there are a couple things that I would like to see improved. I think there is an overemphasis on procedural rules, which kind of impairs discussion and overemphasizes formality, which I think really just hinders progress. But that is really pretty minor. I also feel like communication could be improved between the staff and the commissioners, especially over the summer. For example, after my appointment, it took a while for me to get relevant information related to my posts. For example, my city email, it took quite a while for that to get going. But again, overall, I really do think the commission is smoothly run.
Noted. Thank you. The Youth Commission has a Bill of Rights, and then there's also a lot of articles that go into it, and y'all had the ability to add on a new section or article into it. And I just wanted to ask a few questions about what the San Jose Youth Bill of Rights means to you. And in addition to that, if there's any other articles in that Bill of Rights that you would revise, add, or even subtract.
Well, to me, the San Jose Youth Bill of Rights is essentially like a list for what the city of San Jose should be providing for its youth. Personally, I think the city of San Jose should be providing subsidized housing, and that the county of Santa Clara should be providing a more accessible version of healthcare than the current insurance that is offered at the moment. But if I were to make any changes, I would really focus on subsidized housing. I'm aware that the city of San Jose is already on track to transform hotels into housing for people, but I believe it was called mixed zoning housing. I believe there's a larger need for that. and I would definitely emphasize housing more if I could rewrite the Youth Bill of Rights again.
Danielle, do you remember at all in your time serving in the Youth Commission what that Bill of Rights looked like? Or is that something that you were familiar with? I was just curious to see if there may be any topics that stood out to you or that you were passionate about that you felt were reflected in your time there.
Yeah, so one thing stands out to me. So all of us really felt like it was important that youth had a space where they could go, where they felt welcome, included, and heard. And so what this looked like was advocating for out of school spaces. And I remember when one community center, one youth center specifically, was on the verge of being closed because of budget issues, and we had the opportunity to present and share our case to the city council, and as a result, they kept it open. And so in that moment, I realized that we did have a voice and we needed to use that voice. And while advocacy it won't always end that way, where we're heard and change is reflected, it really made me realize that we need to speak up as youth and we have valuable things to say. So I know that that was one topic that we really rallied around as a commission.
That's wonderful to hear. And I am curious as well for the current commissioners, if y'all feel like you have the same voice and the same impact, and if there are certain topics that you think are actually being heard, or if some need more advocacy and also more support behind them beyond just you, the commissioners, but the city as a whole, and also maybe anyone else that you're working with that is backing you.
I think that the Youth Bill of Rights, kind of just like bridging this conversation point, I think that it's an amazing bill, but unfortunately, it's not something that's really embraced by the community or the youth as a whole. So I think that by pushing this document and really implementing it in school settings would help like push for the message of this document and help youth realize that they have the rights that are entrusted and provided by the bare minimum by the city. And as for any subjects that I think could use a little more advocacy, something that I think we've touched the iceberg of, but we haven't really begun the conversation of tackling this issue, is the digital divide. And so what the digital divide is that especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, access to technology and Wi-Fi isn't equitable, and there's a skew between those who are afforded access to these devices and these resources opposed to those who are not, and those who are not are typically those of a lower socioeconomic standpoint. And so I think that's an issue that the city could do better at addressing, but we are making progress. I know the library is offering free hotspots to help tackle this issue, but I think that this issue as a whole could use more advocacy.
That's a great point and very, very much part of the zeitgeist of this last year and a half in terms of the degree in which we understand the need for access to Wi-Fi, to safe spaces in order to work digitally. And I know that schools are working towards that, but it's good to hear that you have your finger on the pulse of that issue.
So for the Youth Bill of Rights, as mentioned before, I believe it was supported by a council member, but the issue is that not all council members are in touch with their youth. And often, since our commission tries to focus on things such as the environment, our voices aren't really heard as well through that, since some commissioners have a great connection with their council members, whereas other commissioners may not have the best connections with their council members. I know Commissioner Escobar has a great connection with hers, but I don't know how I and a bunch of other commissioners can get connected with ours. District 3 specifically has been a very environmentally focused district in terms of what we've been writing, but our voices don't really get heard as much since our policies end up being approved by us, but then not really sent up to the council with as much power to say. For example, the Youth Bill of Rights got passed and moved within 4 months, whereas some of the policy proposals from years back are still waiting for a council response.
What Nicole, do you think, or any of you, what would need to happen for your voice to be heard?
This kind of goes back to a point that Commissioner Chen raised earlier about knowing if you're a commissioner. Since he didn't exactly know, and since there isn't really a large connection between local politics and officials and our commission, there's this really large gap. So if we could figure out a way to bridge that gap, get council members actually connected with their commissioners, since it is their council office that connects these people to local politics, then that would kind of be one way in order to help bridge the gap between us.
In terms of building relationships with them, what avenues are the youth commissioners taking, or vice versa? How are these connections even being built? Is it something that you're working with them directly all of the time, or do you have to build that outside of the work that you were doing?
So each youth commissioner is appointed by their district specific council member, but after that, there isn't much connection that's made that's incited by the council and the commission. So any connection that's made between the commissioner and the council member is entirely up to them. With my own district office, I haven't really had the opportunity to connect that well. Although I am familiar with the office, I was invited to some events. I can't speak the same for all commissioners, as Commissioner Huang said, that some connections are the best, or not the best, but they're great, and some connections aren't the great. And so what I'm trying to do specifically in my district is reach out to my office and my council member and invite them to attend my youth advisory council meetings. And when we have events in the future, like a conference, I'll invite them so we can get the youth involved with the district for youth advisory council, familiar with the district leadership. And I think that's a connection that can really inspire civic engagement with youth to be familiarized with their district leadership and see who's advocating with them or for them in the council room.
I like to just add as a note, I did check with the city clerk, and most of the other 29 commissions don't really have an age requirement. I think it's 17 is the youngest. And so there essentially could be a 17-year-old on the Parks Commission or on the Libraries Commission. And I don't know if you were aware of this, and we currently have, I think, 47 vacant seats out of like 326, something like that. So it's like 15% is vacant right now, which I feel would be so powerful if we, did like a recruitment and like we're able to fill those seats with youth commissioners, or not even just youth commissioners, but like youth voices. And I don't know, kind of like your thoughts on that, or if you knew that.
Well, I didn't even know that actually. I assumed that a minimum age requirement was 18 in order to be on a city commission in the first place. So that is a very good piece of information for me to know. The only issue is that as a commission, we can't really push for people to campaign for stuff. We'd each have to individually pursue people to get those positions.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'll share with you some of those openings. And there are some where you have to be an eligible voter. So then, yeah, those are 18. But so I was really surprised to find out that it was 17 that you can also join a commission.
Yeah, echoing Commissioner Huang's sentiment, I was also unaware of this piece of information, but I do think that it is a great idea to try to get more young people on these commissions. I feel like youth voices are severely underrepresented, as I said before, and by getting more 17-year-olds on city commissions, I think that would just be really valuable and would help us progress at a faster rate and solve some of the issues facing the youth.
Is there any means to which reaching out and like engaging with people to fill those seats or those open spots, are there any ways that you think would be the most impactful to bring in younger voices? Because that's something that we've been doing a lot of research on for the last couple of months, but also you joined the Youth Commission. Of course, that's geared towards young voices, and the other spots aren't really. So where can we bridge that gap and make sure that people that are younger know that this is available to them?
I think that social media is the single most powerful tool that we have to connect people and make them aware of things that are going on. historically in current in modern history, I guess we've already seen many examples of social media literally instigating revolts and revolutions across, for example, the Arab Spring, that began on, if I'm not mistaken, Facebook. So yeah, we've already seen how social media can literally start rebellions. And right now, social media is being used as a political, I guess, conduit of thoughts. And it'd be really valuable as a tool to make younger people who are almost universally on social media aware of these opportunities for them, and make them more aware of that they too can enact change.
Does the Youth Commission right now have a strong social media presence?
Right now we have a pretty scattered presence on social media. Each district really has their own page, I guess, and as far as I know, we aren't particularly active on it. And I do think that is something we need to change in the near future. We need to use social media more, connect with more people. Otherwise, people are not going to be aware of our existence, really.
How do you feel about youth involvement in local government now? I know that you had mentioned there are some policies that are being passed through, but you haven't really seen them in action yet. And where else can we begin to improve like youth participation? So there's like social media is one, and for example, do the schools get presentations or anything like that from, here is like recruitment process, join a youth commission? Like what kind of resources do you have or that is provided for this type of involvement?
Right. So I'd like to start off by actually going back to a point that Miss Danielle Boulay brought up earlier in this discussion. She mentioned that the Youth Commission, even as just one opportunity, didn't seem like something that youth could join. That it seemed like just being on a commission seemed that was something so far out of reach. And I think that's a common sentiment with youth, that they feel like the government is so out of reach that they can't participate or they don't have the resources to do that. And I think that youth involvement with platforms such as the Youth Commission and the Youth Advisory Councils, they equip youth with the ability to learn how to participate more, but they can only go so far. And so I think you brought up a really good point about delivering presentations to schools to present in order to increase civic engagement with youth. However, that's something that requires complete Youth Commission approval. So I'm not really sure how that's or the feasibility of that, but that's definitely something that we can consider. Another thing that I think that we agreed on in this discussion was that participation from district offices and the council members can go a long way, because it shows that youth that their city district and the people that are championing them in the city council is actively championing for not only the adults, but for the children as well, or the youth as well. I'm sorry. And the youth have the voice now to make change and influence policy. And so I think just the reinforcement that they have that power can go a long way into improving youth participation.
I'd say this is going to be very weird, but mail works. I wasn't allowed to have social media until I was around 15, I believe. And even then, I've noticed that the city's presence on social media has been very official, bureaucratic, and distant. I know at times it doesn't seem like that. Like, I know their PR team works very hard to make it seem approachable. But from a teenage standpoint, unless you have something that's very accessible, such as mail, information at your fingertips, everything seems distant. And as for school connections, in the past, the commission has tried to outreach through schools. The only issue is that we sometimes had to go through a middle person, such as our staff person would often have to schedule appointments with schools in order to conduct outreach. Even then, if the school didn't respond, then we'd have trouble reaching those youth. So a mailing system, although it sounds outdated, would work partially, like at a very minimum basis.
I completely agree with Commissioner Huang's statement about mail. As focused as we are on, I guess, our virtual and digital presence, can't forget about mail. It's been around for such a long time for a reason, and it almost guarantees access to a large number of people. So that is something that I agree with, and something I didn't really think about before, actually. I would also fell into the trap of focusing too much on new technology.
That's great. I love hearing that because I still send snail mail, and my dad is a mailman, so just long history. I love the mail. um, so that's great to hear that that is still a viable mode of communication. So I want to hand it off to Danielle for a minute. Like you've been sitting here, you've been kind of like listening, and all of these conversations. I know you have some questions too.
Great, thank you. I'm so inspired by all of the work that you all are doing and thinking about the depth and breadth of your work. And when I was reflecting back on my time, I remember focusing on youth centers and things like that. And you're tackling climate change, mental health, social inequity, all the things. And I'm just really inspired by your commitment and work. So thank you. So reflecting on your time on the commission, what success are you most proud of as a commissioner? And what made that success possible?
So my biggest flex on this commission would definitely be spearheading rewriting the Youth Bill of Rights last year. It was made possible because all of us commissioners worked together. We held a total of 2 town halls in order to get youth input on what they want added as articles and what they want like taken off or changed. It was over the course of 2 years because originally the document fell through because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but then we picked it up last year, hosted another town hall, and it ended up being passed up to city council in such a short amount of time. So that's definitely my proudest achievement on this commission so far.
That's remarkable. I really kind of appreciate your perseverance and how thoughtful and deliberate you all were with your approach and making sure that everyone's voice was included.
For me, I've been a commissioner for a grand total of about 2 months. I am still very, very new to the commission, and so as of now, I don't have many major accomplishments under my belt, but I really do hope to change that in the near future. As I said, I have a number of mental health policy proposals coming up, and I really hope that they succeed, and I can say that I did something tangible for my community. But as of now, still nothing. Going to change that soon.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm sure you've had some successes, but I understand where you're coming from. Thanks for sharing. Amelia, could you share?
Yeah, so I'm in the same boat as Gordon, as in I've only been in the commission for about 2 months total, but so far, I think the biggest success I've had, or rather the biggest opportunity I've had, was inheriting the responsibility of proposing 2 policy proposals that were written by my Youth Advisory Council last year to the commission. And so one of which was passed that urged the city council to think more about creating sanctioned encampments for homeless communities to provide mental health resources, food and water services, and sanitation services. And that was passed with a 6-4 vote. And so I'm very happy that I was able to learn how that process works and how policies are made and how they're passed through the commission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And the next question I have is, what can adults in local government learn from you all? I think there's an outdated paradigm that it's, adults who teach youth, but every time I've worked with youth, I have learned so much. So what do you think adults can learn from you?
I strongly believe that prioritizing the future instead of current arguments is something that adults can learn. We see this in the argument about environment versus economy. To us, it's not really a big argument because if our environment's not there, where's the economy going to be? For youth, we always have a tendency to think of our future because it's like our coming of age time. It's our moment to actually become adults. So we're always thinking ahead. Whereas I've noticed in debate that adults have a tendency to think about consequences now, such as harsher environmental policies might lead to decreased economic business. But for youth, it's a no-brainer, quite frankly, that the environment should come first. but that may be viewed as a radical standpoint. So it's just my personal standpoint.
That comment made my heart ache with joy. I feel like that's so spot on, and I'm so grateful to have you as a leader today and in the future. So thank you for sharing that.
So one important skill that I feel like adults can learn from us youth is active listening. I feel like that is something that is really underappreciated. I feel like a current issue, I guess, right now is that adults are trying to solve these problems facing the youth without taking in youth input with almost a condescending air, I guess. We know better than you. We can solve our problems for you. And I feel like that type of thinking is really, really harmful because number one, it just isn't productive. And number two, it almost drives youth away from becoming involved in this type of thing and trying to advocate for themselves. So I feel like it is really, really important for adults to just understand that our opinions matter, our voices matter, and that they should definitely listen to us before trying to solve anything because otherwise it just won't work.
Elena, and I were all nodding our heads
Yeah,
throughout that whole comment. Yes, yes, to active listening and to truly, truly hearing someone and make sure that they're understood.
I think for some adults, if you can give, a quick 1, 2, 3 or something, like what is active listening? How would you explain it to an adult who maybe is not familiar with that concept?
I think active listening is just, it's not just listening, it's listening with the intent of taking in that advice, with the intent, with an open mind, I guess. Just passively listening is not helpful if you're locked into that mindset already. So you have to be open to new ideas, I guess. You have to be ready, you have to be flexible, and you have to be ready to be influenced by what you're about to hear.
One thing, I'd be curious if you agreed with this or not. One thing that I've also found is adults often try to provide quick solutions when youth share rather than just listen to listen. So not trying to solutionize, but just taking in the information.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that sentiment. I do definitely wish that some adults weren't so quick to jump to a solution before I even fully explain the problem. And yeah, I completely agree with that.
I completely 100% agree with Commissioner Chen's sentiment. I was actually going to say the exact same thing, but he beat me to it. And I think that just by actively listening and understanding from a youth standpoint the issues that we face, that's the best solution that we have to tackling multi-generational problems. And I think it just goes a long way by having these conversations. And previously in the podcast, I did mention that the thing that drew me most to local government was that the youth are not only the future, but they're the now. And I think that sentiment can be expressed greatly with the adults right now. And I think those conversations can really hold a lot of value in tackling the issues that we've identified, not only in this podcast today, but that the Youth Commission is continually working to identify and to work with the adults and the youth in the room together so we can create a better San Jose for the future.
I have a question for essentially your future selves, because currently you are youth. And honestly, I consider myself still a youth, just slowly entering the adult workforce and finding that I'm running into a lot of the same issues that you're experiencing with working with people that are older, and trying to enact change within a company or even just in my community. It's really hard to get people to listen because they are creating those solutions before you're even done talking. But eventually you are going to be stepping into that space. And I'm curious if you all have an interest in pursuing other positions in local government, whether that be still within kind of a youth setting or in a broader sense in terms of more of a career.
All I know really at this point is that I want to pick the position, I guess, that uses my talents to make the maximum impact. So I want to find something that suits me and allows me to create the most impact in my local community, to create tangible change. And whether or not that is a local government position, I have no idea yet. But I do know I definitely want to go down a career path that lets me be me, I guess, while also making change.
Absolutely. I definitely understand that. It is a very difficult thing to navigate, but I'm glad that you're identifying it now. That's something that I was slow to pick up on.
Cool. So I'm currently a senior in high school, and so my future plans are constantly on my mind. I'm still debating on what I want to do. And earlier in this podcast, when we were doing introductions, I did mention I wanted to major in business. I was also thinking about majoring in poli sci because, very similarly to Commissioner Chen, I wanted to create the I wanted to create the best possible change that I could tangibly to my community, because there's so many issues that are prevalent in not only our local San Jose community, but worldwide. And so I know I myself, as an individual, can't solve all of them. I think the best contribution I can make as a citizen is to learn about these issues and do my best to not only educate myself and gain a more nuanced perspective, but to also educate my peers to the best of my ability and to create change based off of that. And so, as of right now, I don't have any plans of pursuing any other positions in local government, but I definitely think that work is very valuable, and I do see myself pursuing something in that realm in the future. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. It's really informative and helpful to understand how you're actually being impacted by your role in Youth Commission currently.
I've always known that I wanted to go into politics. It's mainly because I've lacked representation throughout my youth and throughout my childhood. But it's also because, now this is going to sound a little funny, but I actually do like writing policy proposals. Like, it does fill me up with a sense of joy. And I know I want to continue going along this political path and make a whole career out of it. My future plans, again, majoring in women and gender studies, because a lot of policies have intersectional effects that people might often gloss over. So I want to understand that before writing anything that could be detrimental to the communities that I came from.
That is so important. I just love all of these answers. I'm always so inspired after being around youth members, partly because you are future oriented. So you kind of have this longer term vision. And I think, Amelia, you had mentioned, this multi generational. We're in a state right now where there's multi generational impact. The climate and things that are happening around the world are impacting people of all ages. Yet in our decision making, infrastructure, it's not a multi generational approach. It's very much, older adults. And I'm hoping, that we kind of begin to shift that, because I don't think we're going to get multi-generational solutions if we don't have multi-generational, representation. And so, yes, I'm just so happy that you're all here. And, I was actually wondering, like, how did each of you learn about the Youth Commission?
For me, the school I go to, Harker, has this long tradition of producing youth commissioners. So it was kind of ingrained in me by the time I was a sophomore, I guess. I'm surrounded by commissioners from from other cities, for example, Saratoga, Cupertino, etc. So I have really always been aware that this opportunity existed. So yeah, I just always knew, really.
I have not always known about this opportunity, actually. I went to Horseman Elementary, then Ohlone Middle School, and there weren't a lot of outside opportunities, even though I know that the teachers and administrators each tried. I then went to San Jose High School, and still there wasn't a lot of awareness for outside activities and engagement and extracurriculars. I really saw that contrast when I transferred to Gunderson High School in 10th grade, which is in a nicer part of town, to say. After that, I saw an increase in outside opportunities, but still the San Jose Youth Commission wasn't exactly known of. It was actually my mother who brought me into the San Jose Youth Commission because she knew that I was argumentative as heck, as she likes to put it. It is true, I am argumentative, but she also has known for a very long time that I liked politics. So she brought it up to me and was like, you should join the current District 3 Youth Commissioners Youth Advisory Council. And that's how I got started in 8th grade. There wasn't really like a big chance for me to know about these opportunities from the start. It was my mother researching on her own while I was, I don't know, attending middle school.
do you feel that there's an accessibility gap in terms of students and their awareness of the Youth Commission, or just ability to get involved with any local government, and then also their ability based on where their environment is and their given resources in terms of actually joining?
Yes, definitely. And I also believe it's connected to generational and income inequality and the wealth gap that San Jose currently has. Like the difference between the high schools that I attended and their cultures, their opportunities, it was extremely stark and startling for me. Because whereas one high school might have been more focused on getting kids off of campus as soon as possible and not have been focused on outside opportunities as much, the other high school had, even though all public high schools are arguably not the best currently, there was more freedom in the high school in a nicer area. And there was a lot more opportunity when all of my peers were of a slightly higher income. And as for the San Jose Youth Commission and involvement, if you don't have good tech currently, it's very difficult to actually participate in local government. I find that it's often the same bunch of kids recycled. It's the same kind of kids that you see in your honors classes that have had the opportunity to buy AP textbooks and to buy SAT prep. And then it's those same kids going for the same extracurriculars because they have the time and the privilege to. Whereas some kids like me are stuck at home translating papers or helping cook food. So it's definitely a gap.
Thank you for shedding light on that. That is something that I've been really curious about and doing my research and kind of just getting familiar with who the Youth Commission currently is and who it's been in the past. Elena and I were fortunate to have access to old archives, essentially from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and getting a good understanding of who the Youth Commission has been. And I think that it's really important that other people get a chance to actually have a say. And I've been wondering how we can reach out to them. And since you are currently in it, I'm not sure if you've kind of identified ways in which that outreach can be put into action, or if you have any ideas of how the current Youth Commission could work in these schools and actually engage with them.
Yeah, so once I became appointed to the San Jose Youth Commission, I tried outreaching back to San Jose High because I was like, where's the opportunity, guys? Actually, they have an announcement system that I utilize a lot so I can put all the opportunities that the Youth Commission has into their school so their student finds out. It's actually a really nice system now that I've gone where you as an organization or as a club input your information, what you want to say, and it ends up in the school's newsletter. I've actually gotten some YAC members from that, and I think that it's a really good way to outreach. In the past, we've held Youth Advisory Council orientations, which are events where our staff, since we're at school, they go outreach to schools for us and they each do individual presentations within the schools if the schools will have us. That's how I got another YAC member. Her name is Yoreli Morales. She's really great. And that's how a lot of the youth commissioners from last year actually got a large sum of YAC members. I think the last time we had about 20 new people who were completely new to the YAC join each district. So I thought that that was a really effective way. Not as in each district got 20, just like in total, there were 20 new people.
That's awesome. I also like to kind of just comment, Nicole, on what you were saying about translating. You know, I come from a family where English was almost kind of like my third language. And so I spent a lot of time helping my parents navigate through paperwork and things like that. And I was also the eldest of three. And so I was responsible for watching my younger siblings after school. And so probably like at that age, the youth commission wouldn't have been accessible to me because of my family obligations. And there is a lot of that with youth members that I think sometimes adults kind of forget, especially if you come from a different, cultural background, because I think it's more similar or more prevalent in communities of color?
I really appreciate hearing that because like I'm the oldest too, so yeah, I get it.
I got you. I see you.
I almost don't want to say anything because Commissioner Huang's answer was so beautiful that I don't want to take away from it. But just to offer a different perspective to our previous question about how all of us kind of got into the Yaks and the Youth Commission, I really just heard from word of mouth. I had a friend who was involved. I'm not sure how she heard about it, but I heard from her and I was like, yeah, what's Euphoria? Is that a club? And she was actually like, no, it's this thing with San Jose. And so at this point, I wasn't very knowledgeable about the issues in my community to the extent that I'm still learning, but I know a little bit more now than I was compared to when I first joined. And so I think just like attending that first meeting really opened my eyes as to how much I didn't know. And that made me want to continue to attend these meetings. And eventually I found myself joining the Youth Commission.
One last question, just because we are trying to really engage a lot of younger voices and build up all of our commission spots and making sure that, everyone that can be on those commissions are. And in terms of increasing accessibility, if you have any thoughts, what are some ways that we might be able to really engage with folks that are of different identities or different backgrounds, so these commissions don't become just entirely affluent places of privilege rather than an actual resource that is supposed to be representing the entire local community?
So I'm going to address this through outreach and then like how we host our events as a commission. For outreach, I really do believe in the mail system because phones cost a lot and those bills do add up. Financially, it's a burden for some people. So mailing, outreach, going to schools, presenting there, and submitting your announcements into their announcement systems, even if only a few students read it, it's still better than like having the same recycled bunch of kids, frankly. And as for the way that we host our events, I was surprised when I was in an internship once over the summer where they did not require students to turn on their cameras. It was like, oh, this is such a pleasant surprise. And they brought up the reasoning behind it that because people in redline communities and people who have been generationally disadvantaged cannot like specifically have easy access to good technology, they didn't require cameras to be on and actually encourage them to be off for the network purposes. And I believe that even though it may seem less human since you are talking to a box, it would help a lot if the commission had those types of events where those cameras weren't required to be turned on. And also, in the future, once COVID is over and once I'm probably like too old to be on this commission, I'd like to see hybrid events where those who can make it in person do make it, but there's also enough time. There's also like an option where if you want to digitally call in because you can't make it in person, then you can attend those events as well. But the only thing is that the Youth Commission itself cannot really, okay, they can process money, but there's a lot of red tape around it since it's a commission, and that's why our commissioners, well, that may be one reason why our commissioners are not paid. Another reason is that a lot of students my age are really focused on the volunteer service hours. Like for San Jose Unified School District, they require about 40 hours to graduate. So a lot of students will use these events and their participation in them in order to fill out those hours.
We're coming to an end, and I was just wondering if there's anything that we haven't discussed that you felt was important, or any kind of, PSA that you want to give for, youth members that will be listening to this as well as adults.
Yeah, I've been very passionate about civic engagement. So if you are 16 or older, please pre-register to vote, because if you're between the ages 16 and 18, you just need to pre-register on the California website. And once you turn 18, you're automatically registered to vote within the state of California. And also for the millennials that may be out there, please show up at local elections. Please. there is a huge gap in terms of voter apathy where a lot of young adults do not show up at local elections because they might view them as not mattering as much. But that means our local leaders are going to be elected by the stereotypical conservative baby boomer who is much more involved in local politics than the modern day political person. So please vote, please.
So kind of echoing Commissioner Huang's sentiment about civic engagements, just know to all the youth out there listening, just know that even though you're young, you can still make a change. You still have a voice, and you should do everything with power to make sure that it's heard. Your opinion matters, and you shouldn't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if you live in District 1, come email me.
Just to echo Commissioner Huang and Commissioner Chen's sentiments, definitely learn how to get more civically engaged, pre-register to vote. But if you're especially interested in learning about the functions and activities of the Youth Commission, you should definitely check out sjpl.org/youthcommission-commission or youth-commission. Sorry, I had to put the plug in. You can visit all of our meeting minutes, agendas, our meeting recordings to learn more what we're about. And if you're specifically interested in the District 4 Youth Advisory Council, you can check out the description that Elena is linking, or you can message me at youthcom4@sanjoseca.gov. Thank you.
Awesome. I think I will say, we're kind of often led to believe that if you want to make change, you should run for office. And I definitely feel that that is definitely one avenue, but one of the most powerful ways that a lot of residents can do is actually participating in commissions. And, the city of San Jose has 29 of them, and we have annual vacancies that are between 40 and 60 seats, like annually. It's actually projected to increase next year. I don't know why, probably definitely pandemic related. And I know that I've definitely felt very heard, and I'm seeing some change happen. I know that in other cities where there's stronger civic education around boards and commissions, it's a great place to participate. And so that's also another avenue. So even once you age out of the youth commission, don't let that be your last interaction with commissions. I think that is a really powerful opportunity for just any resident in any city to be involved.
I just want to thank the youth commissioners for their passion and commitment. I have a 1-year-old and actually found myself getting teary-eyed during this conversation because you all give me hope. So thank you.
All of you gave me so much hope when I was at the retreat, and I was like, oh my God, I have to get them on this podcast. But yeah, Elena, you're like in the in-between. You're kind of like the intermediary.
I am in the in-between. And let me tell you, I spent the last 1.5 years working with a 9-year-old every single day. And I had such great appreciation for the passion she had and like the zest for life and change, and the fact that she saw no issue with like dreaming really big for the future. And I don't know what they're teaching kids these days, but they have a greater understanding of what's going on in the world. And, they understand when they're being wronged, even just in the classroom or with their peers or with adults that they interact with, and they want to be heard. And so I was just greatly inspired by that. And then when I got the chance to attend that like first meeting with Elena, where everyone was just getting to know each other and starting off, and I was just blown away by how impressive y'all are in terms of what you understand your city so well. That's something I've not had the privilege yet of having because I've moved around a lot. When I grew up in Portland, this wasn't something I was aware existed. And then I went to school in Washington and then moved during the pandemic just for a little bit to live in San Jose. And that's when I started getting involved with the community. So in moving to Brooklyn, let me tell you, I am researching every way possible that I can get involved. And a lot of the things that you are identifying in the Youth Commission exist in a smaller way, like little tiny community organizations that people have started in my neighborhood. And so I'm going to keep looking and seeing what I can do in terms of a greater, maybe commission-based option. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And it's been a pleasure to research everything that you've been working on and everything that all of the commissions that San Jose have been working on.
Just high five and like pat yourselves on the back. You should be so proud that you're in this place. And I'm very impressed that all of you are, learning policy writing, even if it's from an unconventional way, because honestly, I think that's just the only access that we have. So unless you're going to go into public administration, it's not really taught anywhere that I've researched. And humbly so, I am also learning because I know nothing. Like you probably know more than me. And I'm learning as I go, as a commissioner in the council advisory appointment commission. And so that's something that I'm still learning. So I feel like we're all at the same starting line, Amelia and Gordon and I.
Thank you guys so much for
Thanks,
this opportunity.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
You
Bye.
too.
Wasn't that just lovely? I don't know about you, but I could listen to the youth speak more on current events and the most pressing issues facing the people of San Jose. The compassion, diplomacy, and inclusivity with which they speak is something to aspire to. Another reason why I found the contrast in the public hearing and this interview so interesting was the multi-generational and diversity in representation of perspectives. In one area, we have millennials and boomers discussing mental health impacts on the youth and how hard it is to legislate something that they've never experienced before. And the other, we have the youth themselves speaking about mental health and climate, social equity, and hustle culture. But the youth are also offering, as Amelia so eloquently put it, realistic solutions. So who is listening to them? Are you? To me, it only makes sense that we should be bringing in a more diverse and multi-generational approach when it comes to problem solving. Because as Commissioner Chen also shared, without the expertise of those with the most lived experience from the impact of unfair, unequitable, or unconscionable legislation, nothing that we come up with could fully meet the nuances and details of these problems and their consequences. And a great place to start is locally, with our city hall, boards and commissions. And by the way, footnote correction on the age requirement. I was able to confirm with the city of San Jose's city attorney's office that generally there isn't an age requirement for boards and commissions. In the municipal code, the exception is the youth commission, which you have to be between 14 and 21. And any commission that requires members to be a registered voter, so 18 years old. And with that, I would like to leave you with some final parting words from the Facebook hearing from Senator Dan Sullivan and Frances Hagen, and the Youth Bill of Rights in the show notes for your reading pleasure. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.
Things together. Because we solve problems together, we don't solve them alone.
And by moral bankruptcy, one of the things that I appreciate the phrase that the chairman and you've been using is one of those elements, which is they know this is a problem. They know it's actually impacting negatively the mental health of the most precious assets we have in America, our youth, our kids. I have 3 daughters.